Welcome to part 2 of this series on how to track on-site campaigns with Google Analytics. In this part we will look at event tracking, a very flexible method to track on-site campaigns. On-site campaigns, as we've seen in the first part, are for example teaser links on your homepage. For basic information on how event tracking works, for example what event categories or event labels are, or how to set up event tracking in general, please refer to the wonderful documentation on the Google Analytics website. In any case, event tracking always needs some technical work up front. So let's go back to our little homepage with all those links, internal campaigns or teaser links, whatever you want to name them. Let's call them on-site campaigns, because this is our series on on-site campaign tracking. So there are different methods of how you can implement event tracking technically. The easiest but most tedious and error-prone method is to manually add a JavaScript on-click event handler to every link you want to have tracked. You can, but you also must exactly specify the category, action, and label for the event you prefer, so you can easily later on find the events you're looking for in Google Analytics event tracking report. So 50 clicks on this link with the label teaser for workshop article means you will find a count of 50 events with the label of teaser for workshop article in Google Analytics event tracking reports. You can also have your IT code something that adds this event handler automatically to some sort of link you specify, or you can use this script I am linking to in the article. This script, called teaserlinktracker.js, automatically checks all links on the page. If the link has a class of teaser, the script then adds a so-called event listener to the link. If the link is clicked, the desired event then gets sent to Google Analytics. A tenth of a second later, that's what you can see here, the original link is followed. That delay is because sometimes the event cannot get sent to Google Analytics quickly enough before the current page is abandoned, because you're actually following a link to another page. So with this 100 millisecond delay, you're making sure most of the clicks do actually get sent. So to make the script work, you need to do the following. You first need to include the JavaScript file at the end of your HTML page. You need to include jQuery earlier in the page because this script relies on some functions that jQuery provides. Second, you need to add a class of teaser to your on-site campaign links or change the selector in the script to the class that your on-site campaign links can be recognized by. So if your on-site campaign links have a class of banner, just put banner here instead of teaser. If you just want to track any link, you can leave out the class selector entirely and just type A. But be aware that this can lead to other problems and may need some more workarounds. I wouldn't recommend it. If you know a little JavaScript, and I'm sure your IT guys do, you'll even find methods to identify your teaser links without having to add an extra class to them. For example, you can identify them as all the links that are in a div container with the idea of teaser box, or whatever your website uses. So the script generates the following data. Every click gets tracked as an event like this. Category, teaser, action, click, and the label is from the current page to the destination page. So let's now go to the Google Analytics event tracking report and see what kind of data we get. I am in the event label reports, so I've gone from category to action and then drilled down to the labels. My example is in German, so the from to becomes von zu. So you can now sort by, let's do that, von, say, Stipendium, that's one of our bigger category pages, and then I get all the teaser links from the Stipendium page. Or I can sort by the destination page. Let's do this with a regular expression. So we want all teaser links that got people to some page that had, say, community in it, so I can check for all the links to our community. And here we go. With a 2, I clearly identify that my filter has to do with the destination page. And with this here, I'm just saying that community has to be included in the target page's URL. So I can see all kinds of teaser links that have led people to pages that contain the word community. Another great thing about this is that you can export the data, unlike with in-page analytics. You can do this via the Google Analytics API, and you can export it to Excel or other programs. Say you want to see which on or off-site campaign brought how much traffic to which of your new articles. With this event tracking script, you can end up with a neat table that displays the page views generated by your newsletter right next to the clicks generated by your homepage teasers. So you can easily see which one did most of the damage. So now that we've seen an example of how to put event tracking to work, let's run down some of the pros and cons of event tracking. So first, the pros. The first one is clean data. Event tracking is my favorite way of tracking teaser links because it keeps your page view based reports and your URLs clean. That is not the case with URL parameters that specify the referrer. More on that in part 3 of this series. And your event tracking data will never be messed up by page view data. It lets page views be tracked as page views and events as events. That's why I prefer to virtual page views, which is a similar method that you can read more about in the article to this video. Second, you'll have access to historical data. That is very important because of course your campaigns change, but what if you want to check last month's teaser clicks? No chance with in-page analytics. With event tracking, no problem. Another great advantage of event tracking is that you can export the data for further analysis in other tools. You can use all the export functions Google Analytics offers and access the data via the API and do more stuff with it in Excel, for example. Another great plus is that you'll have no problems with outbound or subdomain links. That was another big minus of in-page analytics. Moreover, there are also no problems with non-static content. Say, for example, your visitors get to see different teaser links depending on whether they are logged in or not. Or your teasers or banners are rotating every hour. Both of those cases are an absolute killer for in-page analytics, but they are no problem for event tracking. There are some downsides, of course. Of course, there's some additional IT effort up front. You need to do some coding. Even if you include that script, you'll have to include it on your HTML pages, and that usually requires you to get in touch with your IT department. Another downside is that you cannot easily visualize the data. Of course, you can export it and do stuff with it once exported, but of course the visual appeal that in-page analytics brought with itself, there's nothing like this with event tracking. Right-click and open in a new tab is not counted as a click. What counts are the tendencies though, so this should not be a problem normally. And last but not least, there's no easy way to connect events to conversions. For example, that could be questions like, did visitors that clicked on teaser X on our homepage also register? You can of course create segments with the event label of your on-site campaign link as the condition for visits to be included in that segment. But if you have a lot of links, that can be tedious, even with on-the-fly segments via the API. Google Analytics now also allows events to be counted as conversions. But that won't help you here because the click on an on-site campaign link is usually not a conversion yet. So if your main goal is to link your on-site campaign clicks to conversions, you may want to use virtual page views or other URL-related methods. If you only want to compare clicks, event tracking should do the job. The clicks, in my experience, are what satisfies most editors, because that's their easiest and most important feedback to tell them which content at which position drew how much attention. So to conclude, event tracking requires a little bit of coding up front. It doesn't have the visual appeal of in-page analytics, and it is harder to connect to conversion metrics. But it is a very clean and manageable way to analyze your on-site campaigns. It is also a very good alternative or addition to in-page analytics. It works no matter if your page is mostly static, dynamic, or rapidly changing content, if it has outbound links or links to subdomains, and you can access historical data at any time and export it. So much for event tracking. In the third and final part of this series, we will look at internal URL referral parameters, a method that's used, for example, by Amazon.